is a world of you got to be growing your business, growth and growth, growing. How do we make sure Xbox is growing for our players, growing for our creators? So those people are finding success on our platform, which will grow the Xbox business.
Matt, earlier you were talking about these growing gaming communities, growth of...
And what happens when an industry doesn't grow? You end up with some job eliminations, which we had. We had even our own hard decisions to make about building a sustainable business for ourselves. Grow.
In the news this week, Microsoft's Xbox team says corporate words that mean things.
Growth.
Also, an alleged Intel 14900KS, allegedly at 400 watts, which is impressive, not necessarily in good ways. Additionally, some Ryzen security vulnerabilities we'll be talking about, and a renewed AI obsession from the silicon CEOs in the industry.
With that kind of performance, I'm gonna hire AI next time.
Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and the CryoSheet graphene pads. These CryoSheets are molecularly stacked in the Z-axis to encourage vertical direct thermal transfer from the IHS to the cooler. CryoSheet pads are made to be easily applicable for a thermal interface and completely avoid paste dryout because it's not paste. It makes them particularly useful for long service life systems with minimal maintenance. They come in multiple sizes for suitability on the most common laptops and desktop CPUs, and you can learn more at the Thermal Grizzly CryoSheets at the link in the description below. Up first, some big updates to the website before we get started. As a reminder, we relaunched the GamersNexus.net website a couple months ago working with Wendell of Level 1 Techs, and that relaunch was years in the making, really excited about it. And now the big change is that we are beginning to publish more frequently. So the cadence of getting the video content converted into written articles with all the same charts and data and information, although obviously you lack some camera angles and things like that, some of the visual aspect of videos for a more visual review, but all of the data and written content is going up faster now in GamersNexus.net. I'll tell you why in a second. If you're not too familiar with the site or you missed the announcement of it, it is an ad-free experience for technology, computer hardware reviews, and it means it's stupid fast. I've forgotten how fast the internet is when it's not bloated with 17 autoplay video ads on every single page, plus 47 pages to read one review. But the biggest recent change is that I am now no longer the only person who hits the publish button to publish an article after doing a QC pass on it. So that means we're publishing articles faster, we're getting them converted from scripts faster, and the frequency has gone up a lot to accompany the videos and get the information online sooner so it's more useful to you all. And the reason for this, so for the launch of the site, we began working with a tech journalist who formerly worked for Maximum PC. And that magazine was something I remember going into a local bookseller every month before school and buying an edition of it. But he formerly worked for Maximum PC, and he was employed by working under my good friend Gordon Ma-Un. So anyway, Jimmy Thane is his name. You'll see it popping up in the credits in some of these news videos, and if you've used the website, you've seen him credited as the web editor for most of the entries right now. And he's been doing the script conversions to articles for some months now, but up until this week, I was still developing the processes for how do we want to QC these? What's the format supposed to officially be? What's our style guide? And we've defined all of that as a team now. We've all been working together, figuring out how do we want this process to look? What's the workflow? All the sort of usual mixture of quality control plus resource management, time management, all that stuff. We figured it out pretty well. And I'm now handing over the keys to let him self-publish a lot of the entries that he's working on. So we've got a pipeline laid out for that. Jimmy has been absolutely nailing it lately with the quality, getting it converted and making it look good. So he'll be hitting publish on a lot of the pieces now, which is great news, because that means I'm not holding up the publishing on the website for 3 to 5 weeks once something's submitted to me. So really excited about that. This is also opening some doors for some content that'll be exclusive to article format for you all. So some kind of insight to the YouTube space versus the written space, which is where we started, was written. YouTube, it really punishes you, it seems like, if you stray too much from the algorithm or what it thinks of your channel, because YouTube's trying to deliver stuff that it's pretty sure people will click on. The difference with web is there's better discoverability and searchability if you're looking for a specific topic, like a tutorial, how-to, quick answer, whatever. And so we've wanted to go back for beginner type content, like what is a chipset? what are the different sockets? What are the differences in the chipsets? Things like that the core audience might not click on. And I'm sure a lot of you are like, I would love that video, which is great, and I agree, but the fact of the matter is they don't perform that well and they can hurt the channel as a whole. But we still want to make that content. That's going to be going to the website as exclusive written content, and then maybe we'll kind of compile it and put it in videos or just update you in news or something. But pretty exciting because we get to start to put stuff out that's helpful for beginners to the space. People, I mean, that's what I needed in the early days. And it's always faster. Well, video didn't really quite exist the way it does today back then, but it is always faster to get quick answers to things in just something you can skim really quickly. So you should expect content on the site every 2 to 3 days at this point. We've already published all of the 40 series super reviews if you want to go back and check the data for those. And our Intel power efficiency article is there from a while ago. So anyway, that's all going up on the site. Check it out. Microsoft's Xbox podcast was today, and it had some major coping vibes, but with the caveat that they're adding PC players in it through coupling with Game Pass. So it makes the number bigger, and bigger number always better. Given the public battering that Xbox has received over the last few years in terms of sales volume versus the PlayStation 5, it came across a little defensive at times. Either way, they had some actual announcements, so they briefly teased a next-gen Xbox, and it basically amounted to it's going to be powerful, and then that was kind of the extent of the tease. The more important thing is maybe a quelling of rumors, where leading up to this, a lot of runaway rumor discussion online about Microsoft's abandoning the Xbox business. And so this almost seemed like parts of it were written around that with, hey, let's just say we're working on something without revealing anything, just to say we are, to shut that rumor down. So that's kind of how that came across. There was expansion on multi-platform games and discussion there, some more quelling of rumors there. And one of the top comments we saw on the video was, quote, "This could have been an email." And we agree. So we'll keep this really short. We'll have some commentary, but the goal is to get it shorter than Xbox says corporate words for 22 minutes and 54 seconds. After speculation that Microsoft might become a multi-platform game developer, the company announced that 4 Xbox games would be coming to other consoles on the company's official Xbox podcast. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer revealed that it would be 4 titles for now, and explicitly ruled out Starfield and the upcoming Indiana Jones and the Great Circle title. The CEO also didn't reveal what platforms these games would specifically appear on. In terms of the selection, he laid out some of the criteria that they needed to be over a year old and had reached their full potential on Xbox and were IPs the company wanted to keep investing in. Spencer did divulge that some of them would be community-driven, with 2 of them being smaller games that weren't meant to be platform exclusives. Prior to the reveal, The Verge reported that the Bethesda-published Hi-Fi Rush and Obsidian Entertainment-developed Pentiment would be ported to other platforms, which could be the 2 smaller titles. The Verge also reported that the Rare-developed Sea of Thieves would go multi-platform, which could be one of the community-driven ones. Regardless, beyond the 4 games, there would be, quote, no promise beyond that, Spencer said. Xbox's Matt Booty went on to say, quote, "We want to bring more of our games to more players, so we're going to continue to look at that." He also said that the team is pushing cross-play and cross-saves across platforms, saying that it's fundamental to what we're doing. Now, I have some thoughts on all of this. As you all know, we often cover keynotes with great energy, and we'll get there, but some more news first. In the podcast, Spencer said that he thought exclusivity would be less of a deal moving forward. On PlayStation's side, we've seen marquee titles like Spider-Man, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and The Last of Us come to PC. And one other, really the last sort of substantial news item that came from any of this was Xbox President Sarah Bond revealing that the company has more to talk about in terms of Xbox hardware. She said, quote, "There's some exciting stuff coming out in hardware that we're going to share this holiday." We've got kind of a date on it now, and we're invested in the next generation roadmap. She continued to say, and what we're really focused on there is delivering the largest technical leap you will have ever seen in a hardware generation. Not to actually this, but largest technical leap ever in a hardware generation. Not just console, not just Xbox, ever in hardware. I'm pretty sure if we wanted to, we could find a larger technical leap, but point made, got it. Now, off the heels of buying Activision and Blizzard, the team also revealed that Diablo 4 would be coming to Game Pass, and that's on March 28th. And this is the first and only title revealed thus far to come to Game Pass from the acquisition, but they did also talk about Call of Duty for a little bit. Finally, we can't help but pick up on one particular maybe gaffe from Matt Booty of Xbox team, who said this.
Third, we know that Game Pass will only be available on Xbox.
Windows, where it's been available since 2019, because we've just forgotten about the PC and it's only on Xbox. Don't look too hard at the computer next to where you're sitting. Don't want you to think about that. Now, that's their news. We have some commentary because there's one major gripe we had when listening to the announcement, and then also just some thoughts on general business words. But let's start with the gripe.
I think one of the fun recent examples about this is actually Palworld. You know, Palworld was able to launch, they were a game preview, they launched in Game Pass, they also simultaneously launched in Steam. And through the combination of those things, you know, Pocket Pair was able to have this outsized success, and it was the largest third-party Game Pass launch ever. And that's all because we give creators options on how they can launch their games. We've got subscription, we've got retail, we've got free-to-play, we've got game preview, we have the consoles, we have our experience on PC, and they can access all of those things. And when we step back and we just look at the performance of our platform all up, we know it's working.
Frankly speaking, it is beyond unfair to say.
And that's all because we give creators options.
That's all because we've given creators the options on how to launch their games. That is intensely reductive to Palworld's success to the extent that it is insulting. Palworld's success is most certainly not all because of the tools that the Xbox team offers. It robs the studio of its individual efforts and contributions. And frankly speaking, if we're being real here, Nintendo's absence in this particular genre of game for Pokemon probably contributed more to its success than Game Pass. And also, you look at the Steam sales numbers, Palworld has done quite well without even acknowledging the Microsoft side. Now, Microsoft did step in and provide massive support, and so did some other larger firms that are experienced in this. But the point is that to say all because of them, it just feels like it's not really acknowledging what the team has done, and the quote-unquote outsized success, Game Pass or not, would have happened regardless. Especially look at Steam, which has nothing to do with Xbox, really, and Palworld was one of the most successful launches in Steam history. Anyway, gripes aside, most of the conference was allocated to executives trying to rationalize their way through why people play video games, and some of the stuff that came out of that was ample talk of so-called friends and so-called having them. We'll research that part later and get back to you on what that means, but there's something there. And the clarity from their messaging here was that they recognize some of the most successful games ever to exist are multi-platform, and they're right. This is especially interesting for Microsoft if it is able to act as a publisher for more of those games, which buying Activision has kind of set them up to do. Microsoft may have larger revenue opportunities or good hedges by encouraging more multi-platform development. This is at the risk of sharing some revenue with companies technically competing with them on the hardware side, but it depends how they strategically execute the publishing side of things and if they're able to extract more money by sharing the IP. As for the rest, there were some uncomfortable moments talking about layoffs, and it's kind of out of nowhere, but seems maybe more targeted at investors than gaming. Let's listen to that.
It was an amazing year. Some great launches, some of the games that I think will stand the test of time and people will be talking about a decade from now. But it's an industry that didn't really grow. And what happens when an industry doesn't grow? You end up with some job eliminations, which we had. We had even our own hard decisions to make about building a sustainable business for ourselves, but in no way were we alone in that. If you listen to Lisa Su, the AMD CEO, she'll say that AMD-powered consoles are likely to decline in 2024.
The decline really isn't surprising, and it shouldn't be causing panic either, because one, the consoles are aging. You're never going to have as much purchasing in following years, and they, of course, know this, or they should. Two, there's going to be more people waiting on the sidelines for whatever the next hardware iteration is, because they know it's been this many years. It really can't. How many more can it possibly be before the next launch? I don't want to get bought into this one now. And then additionally, the insane saturation from the COVID demand where consoles were basically in supply shock for like a year, that's gone. And all the people who bought stuff then, they don't need to buy another one. So not really a big surprise. This is just kind of another big tech corporate executive moment where you kind of wonder, like, do they actually not understand the massive surge in demand for a couple years is not infinitely sustainable, or are they just acting this way? And we don't have the answer to that. But there was one more aspect to this, so let's listen to that.
I think there's an amazing set of games coming in 2024, but if we don't get to growing as an industry, the industry will struggle. And today there's really two choices on how do you grow the industry. Do you say I have a fixed number of players, the players that we have today, and do I find new ways to monetize those players to get more money from the players that I have?
Yes, Phil. Squeeze every drop of money from their souls. And when it seems there's none left, squeeze the jaws of irresponsibility ever tighter.
Or do you think about how do I expand the business I have by finding new players and adding those to the base of players that already play? Our focus on Xbox for the last decade has really been on that latter point.
Why not both? Moving on. Intel and the 14900KS. Allegedly, 400 watts. This is a rumor. So this leak, first of all, the leak is that there is a 14900KS. The second one is the power consumption. Now, this might be perhaps the best marketing campaign that the cooler industry has ever gotten, because instantaneously 360 and 420 millimeter liquid coolers everywhere just perked up when they heard that 400 watt number. If it's taken at face value, that's 100 watts over what we tested the 14900K for. You can find that power data in our GN Megacharts page, also on the site if you want all the CPU power consumption data from the last 10 years. But this was from a results file that was uploaded to the OCCT database. It gives a log of all the usual CPU sensors, and standard leak protocol applies here, which means that, first of all, we have to assume the 14900KS exists. It's not officially announced. And we can't directly compare these numbers or trust them all outside of some base observations of what they are. But just for fun, let's take a look at them. So some info we can extract from this tells us that the purported 14900KS looks just like the previous Halo tier KS SKUs in terms of what it is as a product. Intel is saving the highest clocking bins of the regular 14900K and then tuning it to run wild with power to hit slightly higher frequencies. The detail page shows the CPU having a max turbo of 6.2 gigahertz on 2 of the P cores and 5.9 gigahertz on the rest. That's 200 megahertz higher peak core clock where applicable, and that's enough to move the needle, but just barely. Taking a look at the reported CPU package power over time shows that the power draw wasn't completely stable over the course of the 42-second run, likely due to thermal throttling, but it stayed well over 300 watts for the duration of the load. Intel's approaching RTX 4090 levels of power draw with this thing, so if you pair the two, you legitimately would not need a space heater, and you could turn your heater off if you just stay in one room and run the computer for games. We're not sure what the interest level will be for the 14900KS, so this is where you all come in. Let us know if, in both situations, if you want us to review it, if you really don't care and you'd rather spend our time on something else, because if we review it, that means some other videos probably getting skipped or not made. So we skipped to the 13900KS. We did review the 12900KS, but maybe it's time to dethrone the 13900K from the bottom, as in bigger bar worse, of our power charts, because it's definitely came there. But it'd certainly be a huge addition to our Megacharts page on the site. Okay, in response to NVIDIA Reflex, AMD originally launched its anti-lag plus update to the existing anti-lag feature. That was back in October. The company was planning to apply frame alignment within game code that would allow better frame syncing, it said, and that should also lead to lower latency, which is a topic we've been covering a lot lately, and what they called great gaming experiences. Wanted to get the quote right. Turns out, great gaming experience, getting VAC banned. Counter-Strike 2 players who used Anti-Lag Plus at the time found themselves on the other side of those bans, which triggered when the game detected those who were running AMD's latency reduction feature. Valve has since reversed these bans. The Counter-Strike X page, the X page really sounds like something that's gonna get us demonetized one day. The Twitter page elaborated that AMD's implementation of Anti-Lag Plus detoured engine DLL functions, which triggered those VAC bans. Gamers also noted online that they were getting banned from Apex Legends, and some claimed that the feature was causing games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 to crash, although it probably can do that on its own too. As a result, AMD dissuaded users from enabling Anti-Lag Plus before ultimately yanking it from the drivers. Recently, when asked by X Poster, we go again, the Razer MD if the feature would be coming back, AMD's chief architect of gaming, Frank Azer, replied, quote, "Yes, coming soon." Unfortunately, no further official details right now on how the company plans to address the DLL issues. To resolve this, they would need to probably work directly with the developers to make sure that the code that's being used to enable Anti-Lag Plus and reduce latency is whitelisted by the developers in whatever anti-cheat software they have. So that would be the change that most likely has to happen. There's a big advantage to the way AMD was trying to do it originally, which is that there's no direct involvement necessary with game developers. So in theory, you can get much wider support, much faster, on games that is. Not necessarily the latency is probably not better than working directly with them, but wider support, quicker to market, and less ongoing maintenance, which are all appealing things when you're talking driver features. It's always the ongoing maintenance that's the concern, because if they decide that feature's boring now and not worth marketing, it just falls off the face of the earth. So those would be the advantages to doing it this way. The disadvantages we are aware of because of the VAC bans, and also it probably doesn't work quite as well as working directly with the developers, but the result, we'll see how they change it. And we're really excited to actually test this once it officially ships again, because as we've noted recently, we've been doing latency testing for GPUs, and we haven't done a recent look at reflex or anti-lag plus, any of these features, and so it's time to do that. And as soon as this comes out, we should already be up to speed on all of that. So up next, according to Reuters, NVIDIA is putting together a new business unit aimed at custom AI chips. This can be thought of maybe as similar to AMD's semi-custom division, except it's specifically targeted at AI. Reasons for this include making processors that are more energy efficient and tailor-made for AI solutions, which NVIDIA would probably hope quells the desire for tech companies to design their own proprietary solutions and going to rivals like Broadcom and Marvell to produce them. This is probably because AI as a field is new enough today that NVIDIA is dominant right now, but there's no guarantee they hold that position. It's new enough that in a matter of years, a company could pop up and suddenly take huge amounts of business. And so NVIDIA likely is aware it could lose this position quickly if the winds change, or if there's a change in what the market needs, and GPU solutions might be a little bit too much versus something fully custom or semi-custom that would directly address a specific type of processing. So you see this in ASICs for crypto mining as a great example, where GPUs lost some of their value for mining, and this is back when it was still proof of work, before the proof of stake switch with Ethereum. They lost some of that value because companies would move to ASICs for a more efficient solution to do effectively the same thing, because it's a very targeted, specific, single thing it needs to do. And NVIDIA probably doesn't want to leave that on the table this time to let other companies come in and take that type of market, except in AI. So currently, NVIDIA is selling more general purpose processors like the H100 and A100 chips, and the higher end H100 units sell anywhere, well, they're all in the tens of thousands of dollars up to 100K, depending on the configuration. Eclipse Ventures general partner Greg Ryko told Reuters, quote, "If you're really trying to optimize on things like power or optimize on cost for your application, you can't afford to go drop an H100 or A100 in there." He adds that you want to have the exact right mixture of compute and just the right kind of compute that you need, end quote. NVIDIA has already been hugely profitable in this field with customers like Google, Meta, Microsoft, and OpenAI, just to name a few. Its market cap is $1.78 trillion, with stock analysis noting that the company's market cap has increased 243.7% in 1 year. NVIDIA is working on a new tool. There's a demo tool that just launched that runs a local large language model, and this is effectively, it's an RTX chatbot, basically is what it is. It's available for free. It can run on RTX 30 and 40 series GPUs with at least 8 gigabytes of VRAM, so RIP to 20 series users, and also RIP to anyone not on 8 gigabytes of VRAM. But all of the computation is done locally on the PC without needing an internet connection after the initial install. The tool leverages NVIDIA's Tensor RT LLM for AI inference, which relies on the tensor cores inside of the GPUs. Local LLMs have been available already through a couple of different options, open source interfaces, models, and they're publicly available. But there's a steep learning curve to a lot of them for users to start getting good results. And there's also more knobs to tweak than the casual user needs. So that's kind of where NVIDIA is trying to slot this chat with RTX into the market, is someone who maybe doesn't need all that customization, and in fact that customization might make it less useful or be mishandled. So outside of streamlining the process, the biggest differentiating feature with NVIDIA's new implementation is the ability to point the program to local files on your PC as sources of information that the model can crawl through. If you had a lengthy manual, for example, you could use Chat with RTX to interact with the information in a more conversational way. It'll also cite the source documentation where it found information, which is very important. I was talking with Jeremy on the team who wrote this particular story about use cases for this. And one of the things we talked about was things like SOPs or documents where you might have sort of basically an if-then hierarchy or tree of events. So for example, you're following an SOP for work, you get result A, and it says if you get result A, or if you have problem A, jump to page 32. And it's like if it's problem A and there's also situation B, go to page 47 or whatever. So some situation like that, it might make sense to use a tool like this to try and jump through it more quickly, especially if a user is not as savvy or adept at navigating those documents. So maybe that's a use case for it. The citation is very important because hopefully, if this comes back to human use, hopefully the human will just at least quickly double check that the answer is correct so that they know it's not hallucinating something and then end up doing the wrong thing. NVIDIA is using a technique called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, for this approach, which is to help curb the usual generative AI hallucinations that we just mentioned. It's likely that you'll still need to double check the important parts of the output manually, but this is potentially useful for tasks that could benefit from LLM processing, but mostly in instances where reference text can't be uploaded to cloud tools like ChatGPT, Google's Gemini for security reasons, or anything where you're worried about IP. As an example of how this type of thing can be useful at scale, NVIDIA trained its own LLM internally back in October on the company's body of chip design documentation and code. The resulting model is called ChipNemo, which can be used by NVIDIA's junior engineers to answer relatively simple questions about chip design that might otherwise take time away from the senior engineers. It's also used to write out short scripts to help with productivity tasks. Some flavor to this too, so when you look at an actual chip diagram, chip block diagram, or when someone has taken off the top layer of the silicon and exposed maybe those nice looking color images of all the different parts of a CPU or a GPU. We were talking previously with a chip designer from AMD, he's been on the channel before, Amit, and he talked about how you have all these neighbors in the silicon where you've got someone up here doing something and a team over here doing something, someone else over here, and you're in here working on this piece of cache. And you might not know necessarily any of the details about what your neighbors are doing because it's all so complicated other than they exist and maybe what that block is, but it's not like you're talking with them day to day about the technicals of it. So in theory, this type of tool should help with that kind of thing if it works well. Now, another interesting feature is the ability to point the tool to a YouTube video or a playlist of videos and ask it questions about what's contained within. Now, the way we think this is working, a lot of people don't know that YouTube already has a video transcript tool. They've kind of hidden it over the years. So click the description, go to the bottom, show full transcript, transcript's over here. We think it's probably just crawling the transcript, which is maybe less impressive. Anyway, Chat with RTX offers two models for launch. They have Llama 13 billion and Mistral 7 billion. The app is still considered a tech demo, and our installer failed when we tried to run it, so there's obviously some progress to be made. That's version 0.2 at time of writing. Up next, there's a quick but important PSA for AMD Ryzen owners. AMD has published a security bulletin with 4 new high-severity vulnerabilities. Luckily, all of the mitigations have already been released, so they're out there. You just need to update. The short version is that anyone on Ryzen processors should go to your motherboard's BIOS page and check for updates. It will be pulled down in the BIOS for the security patch. If your motherboard doesn't have an update posted yet, our understanding is that it should be coming very soon. Not every series of Ryzen CPU is susceptible to all of the vulnerabilities, so AMD's bulletin lists the minimum version required to mitigate all the listed CVEs per family of CPU. It's split up into multiple categories of desktop, workstation, mobile, and data center with specifics for each type of CPU if you need that detail. Based on what we saw for desktop parts, the most recent fix is on the 4000 and 5000 series APUs with integrated graphics, dated for February 7th. Next one is filed under cool things nobody asked for, but will definitely buy. And it's hologram fans. These case fans with holographic displays, called the HoloFan, are in the works from the brand new company Coolify. They're being developed by the well-established company Dynatron, their supplier, which is also a regular pump manufacturer for CLCs. And if they pull it off, it might one-up Lian Li's latest Unifans that have the LCDs on the hubs. Now, we've actually seen fans like this when visiting the largest electronics market in the world in Shenzhen. Those fans were mostly desk fans, though, and benefited from larger area of the blades. They also handled the hologram a little differently. By the way, if you haven't seen that market tour video, you should definitely check it out. It's one of our most popular on the channel. It was a huge amount of fun. Just search for SEG eMarket Gamers Nexus. Videos of the current prototype have been uploaded to both Coolify's and Dynatron's YouTube channels. One of the videos shows the prototype fan before it's in motion, so we can see how it's put together. The front of the fan has an additional PCB with various SMDs and a single thin strip of LEDs spanning across the face of the blades. Once the fan is in motion, the LEDs fire up and start playing animations. Looking closely, we can see the individual concentric rings, but the overall effect is better than we would have thought. The fundamental technology already exists in spinning LED signs, so in theory it shouldn't be impossible to strap it to a case fan. Adding the extra mass and the shape of the PCB, though, may have negative impacts on airflow, and if these end up launching, we'll try to get them to look at. Okay, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more as always. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly, or just gamersnexus.net to read some of the articles. We'll see you all next time.